Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're looking at a topic that might seem a little surprising for software testing: advanced English grammar for QA leadership interviews. We spend all day hunting for bugs in code, right? But honestly, sometimes the most critical bugs are actually in how we communicate. When you're a quality assurance professional preparing to step up into a lead or team management role, linguistic precision isn't just nice to have, it is a vital, high-stakes career tool. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Consider this quote for a second. Vague or grammatically uncertain language can suggest unclear thinking. Executive interviewers at the leadership level aren't just listening to the technical solutions you propose, they are really listening for precision in how you articulate them. In the world of QA, precision is literally everything. If your grammar is a bit sloppy, interviewers might subconsciously infer that your QA methodology is probably sloppy too. Even when your ideas are incredibly strong, a lack of grammatical certainty can completely dilute your impact. So, how do we fix that? Well, here is our blueprint for today. We'll focus on 4 key areas: verb and preposition pairs, the second conditional, modal verbs, and gerunds versus infinitives. Then we'll apply them to the STAR interview method to build a winning answer. These are the 4 specific tools you need to communicate with real confidence. Let's start with Tool 1, Fixed Verb Preposition Pairs. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how subtle these errors can be. In professional English, verbs are very often paired with a specific preposition, and it's a fixed deal. You simply cannot swap the preposition out or remove it entirely without changing the meaning or compromising your professional message. You might hear someone say they need to react on a bug or do something with a problem. It sounds close, right? But the precise, correct phrasing is to react to a bug and do something about a problem. It's these tiny calibrations that signal fluency and incredible attention to detail. Here's a quick toolkit list of the key QA collocations you'll really want to memorize. Notice how these anchor directly to common scenarios you face every single day. You react to last-minute scope changes. Stakeholders complain about a process, which we know happens all the time. You are responsible for the test environment. You spend time on allocating resources, not spend time in or for. You deal with a difficult situation, and you formally report to a specific manager. Getting these prepositions right proves to an interviewer that you possess the fluid, detailed-oriented thinking required of a strong leader.
Moving right along to Tool 2, Navigating Hypotheticals with the second conditional.
Put yourself directly in the interview hot seat for a second. The interviewer leans forward and asks, "What would you do if?" Almost every behavioral question at the management level throws this hypothetical dimension at you. It's designed to test your decision-making processes in situations you might never have even encountered yet. To answer confidently, you absolutely need to wield the second conditional perfectly. It's your best friend for navigating these imagined scenarios. So let's break down the formula. The structure is the word if plus the past simple in the condition clause, followed by would, could, or might, plus the bare infinitive in the result clause. For example, if the team had a dedicated QA environment, we could run parallel test suites. It's an imagined situation. And a quick pro tip for you: if you are using the verb to be in the if clause, using were instead of was is highly preferred in formal interview contexts. So if I were promoted to lead rather than if I was. It just sounds so much more polished. But here is the most important rule of the second conditional, and fixing this one error will instantly demonstrate your high-level language control. Ready? Would never ever appears in the if clause. Saying if I would have more time, I would is a classic mistake. The absolute correct form is if I had more time, I would. Master that, and your hypothetical answers are going to sound incredibly sharp.
Onward to Tool 3, Modal Verbs and Obligation.
Modal verbs are these tiny little words that carry massive weight in English. Mixing them up can accidentally turn a polite, friendly recommendation into a strict, non-negotiable company rule that completely alters how you are perceived as a manager. Look at the differences here. Must expresses a categorical obligation, like an internal policy. Have to is for external constraints, like a client contract. Should is just advice or best practice. It's not a hard rule. And need to expresses a direct urgency to solve a problem. Proving to an interviewer that you can distinguish between these modals shows them you deeply understand project governance, professional boundaries, and team dynamics. So the crucial point is understanding the vast difference between prohibition and option. Mustn't means something as strictly forbidden, like you mustn't share your credentials. But don't have to means it is completely optional. You don't have to attend every meeting. means it's not required, but you're totally allowed to if you want. Mixing these two up can cause serious workplace confusion, so definitely lock these definitions in.
And that brings us to our fourth and final tool, choosing gerunds or infinitives.
Okay, a gerund is an ing verb, and an infinitive uses to plus the verb. Unfortunately, there is no magic rule covering all cases here. A QA leader simply has to deliberately memorize which verbs demand a gerund and which ones take an infinitive. Let's map out a few common ones. Verbs like avoid, consider, keep, finish, and suggest are always followed by gerunds, suggest introducing. On the other hand, verbs like decide, agree, manage, plan, hope, and want require infinitives, manage to finish. Oh, and I have to give you a quick warning on a common QA error pattern. Avoid saying, we spent time to refine the framework. The correct phrasing you definitely want is, we spent time on refining. Now, some verbs can take both, but the meaning changes entirely based on which one you use. Think about the verb remember. Remember plus a gerund recalls the past. I remember sending that report. But remember plus an infinitive points to a future task. Remember to update the test plan. Mixing these up in formal communication creates immediate confusion. If you say, I remember to submit the report, when you actually mean you recall doing it in the past, a native speaker won't have any clue if that critical QA task was actually completed or not. We see the exact same thing with the verb stop. Stop plus a gerund means ending an activity entirely, like we stopped using the old framework. But stop plus an infinitive means you paused whatever you were doing in order to do something else. She stopped to check the error logs. Mastering this specific nuance reflects incredibly well on your formal language level. It shows a truly precise command of English. Okay, we've gathered our tools. Now for the masterclass, the winning STAR interview answer. We are going to use the classic STAR framework: situation, task, action, result, to structure our response. Imagine the interviewer asks you to describe a time you identified a serious quality problem, like a sudden increase in defects hitting production, and how you responded to it. Let's look at how our ideal candidate handles this. And this brilliantly illustrates how to kick things off. For the situation and task, the candidate says, I was responsible for overseeing testing, developers started to complain about lack of visibility, I had to do something. Notice how perfectly they weave in those fixed verb prepositions, responsible for, complain about, and then use the external modal had to clearly establish the urgency of the task. It's a remarkably solid start. Moving right into the action phase, the candidate narrates, if the release date were more flexible, I would have considered a gradual change. I managed to finish restructuring. Here, we can see the flawless execution of the second conditional at work. If the release date were, I would have. Elegantly handling hypothetical constraints. And they follow it up immediately with the correct infinitive usage in manage to finish. That sounds incredibly professional. Finally, concluding the STAR model with the result, the candidate says, the team kept using the triage format. I remember thinking the issue was a shared standard. That experience made me consider applying for leadership. Pay attention how these advanced gerunds, kept using, remember thinking, consider applying, along with the correct prepositions, really build out the candidate's executive presence. This doesn't just sound like a tester. This sounds like a leader. So what does this all mean? Are you ready to apply this linguistic precision to your very next meeting? I challenge you today to stop viewing English merely as a language you have to learn and start managing it proactively as the ultimate leadership tool in your QA career. Precision in language absolutely equals precision in thought. Thank you so much for joining me to break all this down today. I highly encourage you to review these tools, practice these structures until they become second nature, and keep communicating clearly. I will see you next time.